Thank you all for coming. My name is Lynetta Haynes-Turner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Cook County Justice Advisory Council. This evening, we will have what I hope will be the beginning of a meaningful conversation around what makes a community grow. The county wants to hear from you as we explore the intersection and role public safety plays in the economic development and community development of all of our neighborhoods. We have a diverse group of stakeholders and partners here tonight, from Alsop to Orland Park to Homer Glen. And although there may be a difference in the assets and opportunities in each area, the commonality is that we all want to live in safe, thriving communities. I will lay out a map of this evening's agenda shortly, but I'd like to first begin by introducing our board president, Toni Preckwinkle, who will give the opening remarks.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I want to begin by thanking all of you for coming this evening. We're very grateful for your presence and your input. I want to acknowledge the chair of our Justice Advisory Council. Would you please stand up, Justice Burke, from the Illinois Supreme Court. We've worked very hard on criminal justice reform over the last 5 years, but we surely couldn't have done it without the leadership and help and support of Justice Burke, so I'm very grateful to her. Commissioner Deborah Sims had hoped to join us, but has had an accident and twisted her ankle, so she was not able to come today. But I wanted to acknowledge her support for this initiative in her absence. Mayor John Mahoney from Palos Park. Mayor, are you here? I want to acknowledge Mayor Sharon Ryback. I hope I said your last name right. From Midlothian. Thank you. Please stand to be acknowledged. And a critical member of our Justice Advisory Council, in addition to our Supreme Court Justice Burke, is Judge William Hooks, Bill Hooks. So I'm grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to all of you for your participation today. I know that when local governments, including Cook County government, work together, we can achieve results that individual departments could never achieve. That's why I've asked the Bureau of Economic Development, the Justice Advisory Council, and the Department of Homeland Security to work together to help communities in the south suburbs thrive. Would the members of those three departments who are with us please stand up so we can acknowledge you? Thank you. Thank you. Our ability to enroll thousands of justice-involved Cook County residents in county care is a perfect example of what collaboration can produce in terms of services and cost savings. So county care, as you may know, is our Medicaid expansion program run by our health and hospital systems. And one of the things we've been doing is enrolling people in county care in that Medicaid expansion program as they are in the jail, so that when they get out, they can have the opportunity to access neighborhood health care clinics in the communities in which they live, and in particular behavioral health and substance abuse supports. And so many of the people who come into our criminal justice system struggle with those issues. This vulnerable population is now receiving behavioral health, fully supported by physical health care, and we hope that leads to reducing recidivism. Simultaneously, the Cook County Health and Hospital System, as a result of the healthcare reforms promoted and sponsored by President Obama, is moving from red ink to black ink, propelled by federal dollars. There's been a dramatic change in our healthcare system and the people who come into it in the last several years as a result of the Affordable Care Act. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, about 70% of our patients were uninsured, and now it's 30%. So there's been a complete reversal. It went from 70% uninsured and 30% uninsured to today it's 70% uninsured and 30% uninsured. With the help and support of everyone in this room tonight, we're planning our next collaborative breakthrough. One of my first actions as president was to create a Bureau of Economic Development to better leverage existing resources and identify new ones. Now, by partnering with the Justice Advisory Council, our lead agency for criminal justice reform, and Homeland Security, which oversees emergency management, will leverage the power of economic growth and opportunity to help transform our public safety initiatives and revitalize our communities. As we end our unfair and costly over-reliance on pretrial detention and reduce our involvement in the criminal justice system, we recognize that for thousands of people and their families, the path to a truly better life includes a good job and a safe and affordable place to live. We cannot let a criminal record bar employment or advancement for a willing worker. We have to support employers, especially small businesses, as they negotiate the difficult task of background checks. We also have to invest in targeted assistance with transportation to connect people to jobs. New jobs offered by expanding businesses or new businesses activate the power of economic development at the local level by putting private dollars to work in every community. We can assist our effectively trained and educated residents to find and retain work in growing business sectors that include logistics and manufacturing. I'm very excited to see this effort begin with a series of forums throughout the south suburbs. For the first time, our conversation tonight will focus on how to increase public safety and how that increase can positively impact economic development in our communities. The more we're able to stop the violence, the more resources we have to improve the quality of life for all of our county residents. I'm grateful to our great group of panelists, Brian Franks of Northstar Aerospace, did I say Angela? Is that right? Angelia Smith of Fort Heights Community Service Organization, and Ernest Brown of the county's Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, who are here to help share their insights. And of course, I want to thank Lynetta for her leadership of our Justice Advisory Council staff and acknowledge their good work in helping put this together. Lynetta? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President. So we have a full agenda tonight, and so I'm going to apologize up front because I'm going to be a taskmaster to keep us on task. So the panelists, I might give you a sign that says no more. So don't take offense. So as you entered this evening, there were a few things on your table in front of you. It includes your agenda and the biographies of all of our panelists. As you can see, we have a very esteemed group of experts at the table today, so I won't go through all of their biographies, and the President has introduced them, but they're really here, we're here for two reasons, and furthermore, thank you again for coming. The goal for this evening is twofold. We want to begin to build a stronger relationship with the South Suburbs that will lead to new partnerships and opportunities to accomplish some of our shared goals. This is the second of 4 forums. The first one was in the Fort Heights area, and Angelia hosted that for us. The county invests time and resources in the Southland, but we've realized in our individual offices that we could have a stronger presence and leverage our shared resources more effectively. We also want to hear your thoughts and have your help in creating action steps that we can work on with you over the next year. So this is a beginning of a conversation, but what we hope to have at the end of it is some feedback and some recommendations from each of the forums from you, so that us as the county can go back and shape what is the plan moving forward. Okay, we will spend the first hour of this evening with our panel members exploring not only the role public safety has in shaping economic growth and development, but also in exploring the role all of us play in our various sectors, including law enforcement, housing, business, social service providers, and community, because it's all interconnected. Each of the panelists will be given 2 to 3 minutes to provide some opening remarks, and then I will moderate and ask them a few additional questions. As they are speaking, on your table you have index cards, and so if you have specific questions to any of the panelists, please feel free to write them and provide them to your table facilitator at each table, and they will pass them up. The second part of this evening is where the real work begins, and we'll ask you to roll up your sleeves, and in your individual groups, each table facilitator will lead a further discussion about some of the things that come out from the panel. Sounds good?
Yes.
All right, so we will get started, and let me introduce Brian Franks again, if you would like to do some of the remarks.
Please apologize for my voice. I'm a training manager, and I'm in class all day. In addition to, I teach. So after I train all day in the class, I'm in another class all day. I have some things. I had prepared a nice little speech, but I changed it because I had this eye-opening encounter just a couple of days ago at a community center in the south suburbs. I will not name which one, but it was quite remarkable, and I'll share you that story, and I'll try to make it as fast as I can, but you'll see the point. So I'm at this community center in the south suburbs, and it's not a very affluent area, and I was sitting waiting for a friend, and at a table, something similar to this, and right next to me was another table. I would say 3, maybe 5 teenagers. None of them appeared to be older than 15, and I'm stressing at 15. I would say they were 13 or 14. And as I'm sitting there listening, they just said some of the most vulgar things. One young lady, she looked to be about 12. She was saying, I did this last night, and I did this to so-and-so, and you blah, blah. And you can imagine what I'm saying. I just couldn't believe it. And I'm just sitting there, and so finally I looked over at her. I said, young lady, do you have to use that kind of language? And she looked at me, and I can tell you it went south from there. Yeah. It went south from there. Now, I was just coming from work, so I was pretty much dressed like I am now. She didn't know who I was, could have been anyone, but she let me have it. She let me have it. She cursed at me and cursed me out worse than I've ever been cursed out in my life. In my life. And I'm stretching it to say she was 12 or 13. And I just my heart just sank. It just sank. And I'm thinking, here's a young lady who she doesn't have a chance. If this is the way she is at 12, she's probably going to be worse at 16, 21, even worse. Yeah. So here's the significance of this. Bad young people turn into bad older people, you know? So we have to start there. So when I'm looking at this question, I'm thinking that, you know, what if I were to sit there and didn't say nothing? Now, granted, I'll be honest with you, my little question and answer to her didn't really help much because she still went into me, but I did care. I took a second to stop and I asked her questions and maybe later on tonight when she goes home or the next day she'll think about what I was saying and asking her and think about it and maybe, just maybe, she'll change a little bit. But the fact is, you know, it takes people like me and anyone else that cares. If you don't care, you know, I don't know what would happen from that. So again, I had this long drawn out speech, but when and this was just 2 days ago, South Burbs at the community center, and I was so embarrassed and so hurt, and I was speechless because I can't even imagine to believe that some 12-year-old could curse the way she did to an adult, someone she had no knowledge who I was. I mean, I could have been anybody, and she just let me have it. So I'm just thinking like, wow, this is a young lady at 21, who knows where she's going to be at. And you know, it takes, again, bad young kids turn into bad adult kids. And it takes, you know, good people to make good communities. Bad people make bad communities, you know? So I don't want to take too much more time because it was really heavy on my heart when I think about it, it's still heavy on my heart because I have a teenage daughter about that same age, and I'll tell you, if I even thought that she would say anything like that, I don't know what I would do. I think I would probably go to jail because I'd probably want to kill her. I would. But she didn't have a chance. So I think it starts with, and it starts with people who care. So think about this. Think about the last time you took a second to care. When you saw something that was a little out of place, when you saw a teenager who was doing something a little bit out of whack, what did you do? Did you say anything? Did you just, oh, that's just the way it is? Because if you don't care, you know, no one will. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. So we have next Ms. Smith from the Ford Heights Community Service Organization. And the panel is going to be addressing kind of the intersection between public safety and economic development. It's on your agenda, and also how does a community facing one or both of those challenges grow? If you can speak to that.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for being here. We had the first forum at Ford Heights March 8th. We had a large crowd as well, and a lot of good discussion about what it takes to make a community grow. In Fort Heights, of course, most of you may already know that Cook County Sheriff Police is providing law enforcement services. And that in itself has been a tremendous asset for the community. We find that we're working very closely with the Sheriff Police to develop initiatives, and they're having consultants come out to look at ways to help us with resource development. So that is good in itself. If you don't have a effective law enforcement component as part of your community, there's no way that economic development is going to come to the community, no matter how hard you try. Fortunately, I can say that the community center that you went to, that wasn't us. We don't require, we don't allow that type of conversation to go on. We don't serve youth per se. We work with a lot of other organizations that provide youth services. Our focus is on anyone 18 years of age or older, because we recognize that unfortunately, in communities like Fort Heights, where you may have a lot of female heads of households who were teenagers when they became parents, and then then their teenage children become parents, if there's not someone to help shape and mold what's going on in that family. Everybody talks about youth programs. They are essential to the growth of the community, but we provide a cocoon for the kids when they're at school, or they come to enrichment programs, and then when they go home to the same circumstances that are there, then that's sending a mixed message. So we want to do a holistic approach to dealing with the family as a unit, to make sure that any lessons learned is something that's going on all the time. So again, I'll say again that if you don't have a good sense of law enforcement, community policing, law enforcement making the youth and other residents feel good about them being there to help serve and protect, then you're never going to see any economic development come, because individuals who don't have any hope find themselves in the midst of criminal activity, no matter how large or small it is. And then, of course, we know when statistics are run, when you look at communities like Fort Heights with a small per capita, they say that there's 50% crime at this rate or that rate, when really in comparison to larger communities is very minimal. So we're very happy to try to strengthen the relationship between law enforcement so that we can continue with our economic development. So I think I'm going to stop talking before I get the hook as well. Okay.
And then we have Director Brown from Homeland Security on the same issue around public safety and the connection, and why you believe public safety is or isn't important when you're talking about economic development and community development, specifically in the areas where we are now in the south suburbs.
Before I begin, we have a golden opportunity in this room tonight, folks, and the energy that we generate in this room will be directly reflective of how much energy we're able to generate on the street. So before I start, I want to say good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
A little more energy, please. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
That's a little bit better, but we'll get started. So before I get the hook. So an interesting statistic done by the University of California in LA years ago that said no circumstance where the community and government have ever partnered has resulted in failure. So that indicates that if we're able to collaborate effectively at every level of government, we will always succeed. And there's no crime problem, there's no disorder problem, there's no economic problem that can't be defeated, but it's going to require us to collaborate. Specifically, to speak to what Lynetta is asking me to speak about is the perception of crime. The community policing models that most police departments use, the perception of crime is more important than crime itself, what actually occurs. Well, if it's important for the residents, it's equally important for businesses that contemplate entering into your communities. So the importance of collaboration with your local law enforcement, whoever it is, the county sheriff's office, all the local bodies of government, is critical. You cannot, let me digress. We have such a great opportunity here under the direction of County Board President Toni Preckwinkle. What we're able to do with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is provide economic balance in terms of resources for the law enforcement community, to provide them with resources that you might not otherwise be able to afford. And so we do that capacity building through training, through the acquisition of equipment, through the loaning of equipment that we already own and is prepositioned throughout Cook County. So the flaw in thinking up to this point has been that there is some distinction between public safety and economic development. Those are two intertwined avenues of endeavor. One doesn't exist without the other, and one will certainly fail without the other. And so what we have to do is work on focusing all of our energies on how we make those not just intersect, but intertwine and interconnect on a daily basis. So I'm going to leave you folks with that. I'm looking forward to working with you collaboratively. I have cards up front, so before the evening is concluded, I'm hoping that everybody will take a card and we'll figure out some way to connect and continue the collaboration. Thank you very much.
So as I said before, there are index cards if you have specific questions that you'd like the panel members to address as we move forward. And thank you, Director Brown, for setting the stage for that. So understanding that not all of us here may have public safety as your top concern, right? So what we want to focus on, if we could have the panel members think about what are the other buzzwords, right? Because to the point around public safety and economic development going hand in hand, so does affordable housing and access to social services and community development. So can you speak to that in your role of what that importance is to growing what we say thriving communities? And then I'm gonna actually add another piece. Can you speak to what a thriving community looks like from your vantage point when you are working in your space?
Okay, put me on the spot again. Okay, I would say that, again, it starts with youth, because the youth are the leaders that are going to manage our communities, that are going to, they're the politicians that are going to make all the decisions for our communities. So I think it starts there. It starts in the home. I think it starts with educating them on the value that they play, giving them some direction, giving them some hope, giving them a job. And I want to go back to the encounter that I had, because one of the topics and one of the things I talked to this young lady was about, because I work with this particular suburb, this particular community center. I teach there, and in the summer I have interns. So I said, you know what, would you like to have a job? Well, I don't want a job. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want a job? Well, I just don't want a job. Well, what do you plan to do with your life? Well, I don't care. I'll be okay. I'm like, well, what are you gonna, when you grow up, what are you gonna do? What do you want to do? And then she obviously went into the rampage of curse words again. So I'm wondering, because she mentioned this about her mom, because I said, what would your mom think? Oh, my mom don't care. She don't have a job. And these are her exact words. These are her exact words. So I said, well, okay. And I was speechless, just like I'm speechless now, because I didn't really know what to tell her. But I know this. Kids have difficulty finding jobs. When they have difficulty finding jobs, they get into stuff, like the director said. So one of the things that I work very, very hard to do is help promote grants to train those students, train those kids in the area so they can find jobs. I work very, very closely with South Suburban College with grant programs and I work in the manufacturing industry, an industry that's not doing very well now, but we offer, grant-based programs to try to just help those kids like her or those adults find jobs, because the reality is, when they don't have jobs, they get into things, they do bad things. When they do bad things, it turns the entire community into a very bad community. I know one particular manufacturing company that's actually leaving the South Suburbs next year because of the neighborhood. It's just too poor. Not poor in terms of financially poor, but and this is the person's exact words, when I bring customers to my facility, I'm embarrassed because the neighborhood looks tore down, it looks beat up. So they're leaving. When the communities look tore down, beat up, no new business, they're not going to want to come there. I mean, I wouldn't come there. You know, I certainly don't have all the answers. I don't know if any of us do have all the answers, but I just keep going back to it starts when they're young and developing kids and training them right, because if they turn into good adults, productive adults, they're the ones that's going to help us build our communities up. They're the ones that are going to hold the positions that are going to manage our communities.
Would one of you like to respond?
I'm going to answer that. I'm going to read a list of issues: education, employment, school mobility rates. So when employment rates are poor, school mobility rates go up because people can't afford rents, people are constantly moving. If a teacher has to have a change in the student population of 30 to 45% every year, he or she can't teach. The reading scores go down. When the reading scores go down, federal dollars for education start to diminish. Higher dropout rates lead to higher crime rates. Higher crime rates lead to residential flight. Residential flight leads to resistance of businesses to come in and establish a base in the community. So what a thriving community doesn't look like is that. And so what we have to do is focus on those issues with laser beam intensity on how we uplift those issues and prevent those issues from growing root, or if they've already grown root, how do we reverse the trends?
So for the Fort Heights Community Service Organization, we're a comprehensive social service agency that offers a multitude of services, not only for stabilization, but also for sustainability. While we have safety net programs that are much needed by those clients that we serve, in Fort Heights, Glenwood, Linwood, Lansing, and Sauk Village primarily, we also have a workforce development program that is geared towards helping individuals either learn a new trade or enhance or improve the trade that they already have. We specifically have what we call our Access to Recovery program that is funded partially by the state of Illinois and United Way, that works with ex-offenders and substance abuse recoverers. And that's where we have a large concentration, not only in Fort Heights, but all the other communities that we serve. Those individuals get life skills training, recovery support, spiritual counseling, and then after they receive those services, because of a special curriculum that we develop with Prairie State College's adult education program, they get training in the construction trades, primarily forklift, which a number of our clients, over 60% have received employment through warehouses, Costco, Ford stamping plant, as well as introductions to plumbing, electrical, drywalling, painting. So with those type of skill sets, if you're an ex-offender, the employer really doesn't care about your background as long as you show up to work on time, you know, time management, conflict management, anger management, you know, so that you can come and be a productive employee, which allows you the opportunity to stabilize not only yourself, but your family goals. In addition to that, we are a HUD-approved housing counseling agency with a focus on affordable housing to provide individuals with an opportunity to secure home ownership opportunities, because a lot of folks in our area are renting at rates far more greater than what they would pay if they were homeowners. So we look at ways that we can sustain individuals and help them, you know, move forward in their lives, and then that way that becomes a stepping stone not only for them but their families. So with the president of Cook County Sheriff Police helping us with law enforcement and the economic opportunities that we offer, you know, we feel that we're making steps and strides in the right direction.
Thank you. So both Mr. Franks and I think you all addressed kind of jobs, and so that keeps coming up. And so I'll have Mr. Franks, one of the questions is, how do we provide the support for businesses and agencies who have the heart and passion to develop the community, but need to overcome the political challenges to economic development? So we're talking about, you know, there's assets, but there are also challenges to doing the work. So can you speak to that? Yeah,
I think the first thing is to not give up. oftentimes with these programs, you try and you get to a point you don't see progress made because of oftentimes just bureaucracy, and you forget it. And that's certainly not the answer. I think no matter what, we can't give up. I think it starts with the schools in the community, and I speak for South Suburban because South Suburban is in the community and it's the school that I work with. We have just numerous programs. We work with almost all of the manufacturing, and not only manufacturing, but companies within the South Suburban area, just helping them develop their people in any way we can. And again, this is all grant-based. The challenge, interesting enough, is just those companies not willing to reach out to us and utilize these grants. We're having an extremely difficult time with marketing our product in terms of not necessarily marketing, but companies won't come to us. We have the money, we have the tools, we have the classrooms, we have the talent to teach people what they need to know, but for whatever reason, companies are just not responding. So one of the good things I'm doing now is hopefully I'm telling you this over and over again, so you can take this back to your communities and take this back to your plants and let them know, hey, South Suburban has programs, Prairie State has programs. They have a manufacturing program too. I work with folks there too. So the programs are out there, and again, most of it is grant-based, so it's not a lot of out-of-pocket money for companies. So companies just have to utilize it.
So I hear you saying that maybe one of the action steps is around how to engage businesses in the neighborhoods where you are, and that's a longer conversation, but it sounds like one of the action steps to put on the table. So Angelia and Director Brown, if you'd like to speak on that.
So we find that individual door-to-door, word-of-mouth outreach are effective as well when you're trying in communities such as the ones that we serve. Because once you get the word out, people are definitely interested in, or appear to be interested in what may be offered to them. You mentioned the question was in part about how do you accomplish some of your goals in light of the political climate. At the local levels, because we have so many small communities, it can become challenging, but when you have the county taking the lead on something of this fashion, I think that it encourages local politicians, mayors, or whatever, to say, yes, let's go ahead and try and make this process work. Because if we don't do things to strengthen economic and law enforcement efforts in the Southland, we're going to continue to lag behind the other regions, the North and the West regions. I serve on the Alliance to End Homelessness, and I can tell you that whenever we go to meetings, there is such a need for services in the Southland, affordable housing, employment opportunities, transportation. There are many jobs in the West and the North, but they're not accessible to individuals in Fort Heights, Linwood, and Lansing. We have folks that literally have to walk so far, a couple miles, to get a bus to then come to our agency, which has a PACE bus stop right at our doorstep, in order to get training. So the transportation is definitely an issue, but I think that given the fact that the county is really taking the lead on trying to spur economic growth and development and thriving communities in our region, that hopefully a lot of the local politicians will stand up and take notice of what's going on.
One of the things I see is for those folks who have community-based activist groups is strategic partnerships. More often than not, a grant application is rejected, and one of those reasons that grant is rejected is because the requesting body isn't serving enough people. So if you have strategic partnerships, collaborate with folks who have identified the same types of services or the same goals that you have, partner with them and jointly apply for grants and things like that. So that's one, what I think is a strong action item.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I can say that our organization has partnered with numerous organizations on 2 different projects. One is the Hub, which a lot of people in this room may be familiar with, and that's a collaboration between 4 local agencies. Our agency is the lead agency. We have Respond Now in Chicago Heights. Together we cope in Tinley Park, as well as South Suburban Pass, which is in Chicago Heights, and what is it? Hazelcrest. Thank you. And so I couldn't remember the other location. But that program is an information referral support service and advocacy program that we've developed. It has garnered attention not only from Cook County, but also from Chicago Community Trust and United Way. And it is a model for the coordinated entry process that the Alliance to End Homelessness is putting together right now. We also do permanent supportive housing with Aunt Martha's and Respond Now, where we have 12 units for chronically homeless individuals that have a qualifying disability. So because we recognize among our organizations that it's important to have a partnership and not continue to be silos, we're being a lot more successful in getting funding to the people that need the help.
So that's a good segue to the next question. So we've kind of talked about community development and public safety and what that means. I've heard a lot of the important words around kind of affordable housing, access to transportation, jobs. One of the other pieces is communication and really having access as community members. How do you all propose that community members here who want to see action in their individual communities, what are some tools or some strategies that they can use to begin collaborating with each other, obviously with the county and others?
Put me first, huh? There are a lot of different social media platforms that can be used for that. We have direct access. I think I can speak for all the county agencies. There's a direct access mechanism for, depending on the area of expertise that you're seeking. But I think that leveraging the social media, because ultimately, if you use any of the larger social media, you set up a community page or a city page or a township page or even a page based solely on issues, then not only do you attract the attention and get information to and from in a bidirectional fashion to your local partners in that, but you also have national coverage, the people who log onto the Facebook or one of the other social medias and see. So I think there's a lot of room. Social media, it's amazing. Our kids do flash mobs and everything else based on social media now, and we can get 1,000 kids in one location simply through social media. And so I think it's important that as adults and community activists and community movers and shakers that we leverage social media for something positive. We always hear about the negative attributes of social media and that platform, but there's a lot of room to leverage that for positive informational exchange.
And so, again, social media is great. I'm learning it more and more every day. But again, there's a large population that we serve that is never going to become acquainted with that. So we do things like surveys among our clients and the community, focus groups, if there's something, a new project or program that we want to offer, to make sure that just because we think it's a good idea, we got to make sure that it's something that the clientele will be interested in as well. So those two things play a major role. And then two, I'm sure a lot of you in the room are familiar with Chicago Community Trust and the new project that they've started called On the Table. I think this will be the 4th year. We are hosting On the Table on May 10th in partnership with United Way, Southwest Suburban Region, as well as the Hub. And that is where we're asking for stakeholders and decision makers to be present for a breakfast meeting so that we can continue this conversation that we're having here today, share some of the ideas, goals, initiatives that are coming out of these meetings so that we can continue to shape what needs to be done in the Southland and get the support of private foundations as well.
The director took my answer. I was thinking about social media too. I mean, that's the end thing now. I guess the only other thing I would probably add is that, I think communities and folks that live in the communities, they should really utilize their individual town meetings. I had the opportunity to start going to mine, and I live in Hazel Crest, and I was surprised that there weren't many people there. So folks just need to go to the meetings and get involved. Visit other township meetings and get involved with them and collaborate with nearby townships. do what they do, see what you're doing, but I think the social media thing is the key. And I would agree that there are a group of folks that are never probably going to get it, but I think there's more folks that are getting it that aren't getting it, even folks that are up in age. So I think if we really utilize and leverage that Facebook and LinkedIn, the ladders, whatever the case may be, I think it's a great start for sure.
If I can do a side note, I consider myself young and I will never be on Twitter. And I don't quite understand LinkedIn, so I guess I need some help as well. So we have a couple more questions before we want to take a quick break. We have a raffle to keep all of you all captivated audience. So you can't leave before you get your prize if you are the lucky winner tonight. But we will take a short break after the panel discussion, let everyone get some coffee, water, do what you have to do before you come back to the tables for the breakout session. And where we're hoping that because we understand that there are so many different geographic areas represented here tonight, that you can really delve down into your specific area and what are some of the assets and opportunities, because we all have rich neighborhoods, and then where are some real opportunities that partnership with the county would make sense. So Director Brown, I think this is going to be largely you, but the rest of the panelists can chime in. So I'm going to combine two of these last questions around public safety. And I'll do a two-part. Some of the audience members really want to know how to effectively work with the police department to provide the safety and services to the consumers who are really trying to go about their day-to-day business, which drives businesses being able to stay in their particular neighborhoods. And what does Department of Homeland Security propose to do to increase prevention programs that will really help reduce the targeted violence without the collateral consequences of increasing juvenile arrest, detainment, and incarceration? So that's a lot.
That's a whole bunch. By way of background, I spent 29 years as a member of the Chicago Police Department, and when I left, I was head of the patrol division that was involved in me being responsible for 8,000 uniformed personnel. I was the chief of a small department out west of Darien Police Department before I had the privilege and the honor of working for the Cook County Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So in terms of what we can do, you guys have the benefit of being served by the Cook County Sheriff's Office, and I can guarantee you that as a former law enforcement official myself, there's no higher calling, there's no greater opportunity when the public seeks to engage with your local law enforcement. So whoever your regional commander or your Cook County Sheriff's commander is, reach out to that person, and I'm sure he or she will be looking for opportunities to connect with the community. In terms of what the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management can do, we're largely grant funded. So we have two primary sources of grant funding. UASI, or the Urban Area Security Initiative grants, and those grants are largely for counterterrorism and disaster preparedness. But we also have the Justice Assistance grants, and those are grants that we seek to facilitate to provide to both law enforcement agencies and community groups. And so each year there's a vetting process where we accept applications from various community groups as well as law enforcement agencies to get funds to them to assist in that. And so in terms of we have to recognize that there is a huge push in changing how law enforcement interacts with our youth community. And the goal is not to criminalize our children, but the only way that can happen is working in tandem with local law enforcement, and then setting a set of criteria or boundaries that are acceptable to the community, because all government serves at the behest of the people, and the law enforcement community is no different. But you have to identify what your expectations are, and your police commanders, your police executives will follow that lead if it's pressed upon them to do so. So the key is accountability. If you hold the police department who's providing service in your community accountable, they will meet the expectation. or will strive very hard to meet the expectation. But that accountability must be ongoing. You can't get mad today because you were poorly served and then drop the idea. The biggest distinction after 33 years of law enforcement that I find in those communities where law enforcement is most accountable and most effective is based on the public demanding that accountability. So if you demand it, you will get it.
All right. So we have 2 more questions before we break, and this one is more an acknowledgement that the importance of the faith communities are also critical in this effort. So I think we can all agree that the faith-based community is an important part of helping communities thrive. So thank you for that. Of course, you can speak to it very quickly, like really quickly.
One of the things, when I was asked about the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management input, we have a faith-based initiative that's designed, it's called the Interfaith Security Advisory Council. There are 3 purposes. It's been retooled since I've arrived in the department. One of them is to teach the houses of worship how to harden their facilities against potential active threats, whether it be a terrorist attack or just a crazed lone wolf gunman. The other phase is to educate their parishioners, and then the third phase is to see how we can leverage everybody into a state of readiness, because if a disaster hits, whether it's a tornado or a terrorist event, there's an issue of cascading failure. If something happens in Chicago, if it happens in Richmond Park, if it happens in Midlothian, everybody in this region is going to be impacted by it. And so in theory, before professional first responders arrive at your doorstep, what we want to do is teach each of you how to maintain yourselves for that first 96 hours until those first professional responders can reach you. So that's the nexus of the interfaith community, and whoever wrote that question is 100% spot on. Thank you.
I guess that was quick enough. So the last one, before we have some closing remarks, this one I'm going to tag in Bureau of Economic Development. The question is, what is the solution for villages that cannot afford to give tax incentives to attract business or afford local community reentry programs and resources? So Susan has graciously said she'd take this question for the team.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Glad to hear you say good evening back. I am actually older than Lynetta, and I have to admit I probably will never get on social media, much to my daughter's chagrin, but I'm committed to try to learn. To answer the question about the tax incentive question, what we're finding in the first of all, let me just introduce our Bureau. The Bureau of Economic Development consists of a number of departments that are there to assist businesses and to assist local communities. We have the Department of Planning and Development, which is the receiver of the HUD resources and funds to assist local communities and to help with public wraparound services for families to help communities be healthy. We have the Zoning Board of Appeals, represented here by James Wilson, to assist communities with making the necessary changes to land entitlement so that land can be redeveloped. And we have the Department of Building and Zoning to also do similar work. So when a business comes to a community, the first thing they ask is, what are you going to give me in order for me to get there, right? And one of the things that we're hearing from many of the companies who are trying to recruit is that actually the property tax incentive is not necessarily as important as workforce development and the quality of life in the local community. And so that's where I think our department can really help work with you to see what kind of things can we put in place to establish a healthy community that has a good quality of life for the employees who will be working at that community. And also, what can we do to make sure that we are tying that employer with the workforce programs that you mentioned that are going underutilized. That is an enormous resource that most employers have acknowledged once they get engaged with those programs are priceless. So I think we have to start turning the expectations a bit and changing that paradigm. Instead of having people expect to get a tax incentive or think that that's the key tool to utilize getting a company into your community, really look at what they truly want, which is a healthy workforce that can go to work. And we have resources in place for that, and making sure that the communities in which these companies will locate have a high standard and quality of life.
Thank you, Susan. I could not have Googled that answer, so appreciate it. All right, so as we end, I'd like to wrap up with each of the panelists. If you could give us, because the second half of the hour is really focused on rolling up the sleeves and saying what are some actionable steps that community and the county can take over the next year. So in ending, could you give one suggestion about how individuals in this room and all of the communities represented can begin to strengthen their community in light of all of the issues and some of the things that we've talked about: public safety, needing affordable housing, needing to be able to attract business, job creation, and then access to transportation so that we improve the quality of life for all of our Cook County residents.
I think just in my community alone, I think the simple word is just get involved. You know, there are folks that just won't get involved. They complain a lot and talk a lot, but they just won't get involved. They won't go to the township meetings. They won't go to the, some of them don't even vote. So when you have that kind of attitude, then nothing will get done. If you don't get involved, nothing will get done. You want things to remain the same, keep doing the same thing. So I think it just starts with just simply get involved. And from when you start getting involved, things start happening.
You took my answer. So no, involvement is important, but also requiring accountability of those individuals that have the power to make that shift to, provide opportunities for economic growth, working with the county, working with the township. We have so many small communities and everybody wants to do their own thing, and we've got to be involved, work together, and make sure that as constituents, make sure there's accountability.
I'm going to be hard-headed. Lynetta asked for one. I got about 30, but I'm only going to give up 2. So the first one I would say is begin to leverage the businesses that are in the community towards some sense of accountability, whether it's adopting a local school so you can hire teachers with higher aptitudes for math and science and reading, or supporting some of the other community initiatives, but leveraging those businesses. The other thing that I would identify as an action item is pressing your local law enforcement to have regular meetings with you so that you can understand what their issues are and you can demand what identify where your expectations are. Those are my 2.
Can we please give them all a round of applause? Thank you. So this concludes the first part of our panel discussion, but you don't want to move because Rebecca Janowitz from our office has the raffle prizes, and then we will reconvene promptly at 7:10.
Okay, and the lucky folks are the holder of the ticket ending in 775. Who's got 775?
Right here.
Yay.
Come on down. We have something old-fashioned for you.
Money in this
It's called money. And you're welcome to give some of it back to us later this year in taxes. The next one is the lucky person holding 770. Thank you all very much. Rest for a couple minutes and then prepare to get to work.
And because of what if you don't mind, do you mind a couple of minutes to try and